welcome to our show, CBD and Hemp Defined. My name is Tina Breeze Wahlers, and I'm here with Tim and Tracy Thompson of Thompson Hemp Company. Today we're going to talk about CBD oils and hemp and everything that has to do with that. A while back, the Thompsons contacted and reached out to JATV to ask if we could help them get the word out about their product and their company. So I didn't really know too much about CBD or hemp, so I thought it was a good idea maybe to get them in here and talk about it so that I could learn more, and more importantly, so that we could educate you, our viewers, on CBD and hemp. So today, again, I have Tim and Tracy Thompson, and so they are the owners and operators of Thompson's Hemp Company. So welcome, Tim and Tracy. I'm glad that you could be here today.
Thank you.
Hi,
Awesome.
Tina. Thanks for having us. We're so glad to be here.
Well, great. I'm so glad that you could join us because, like I said, I didn't know a whole lot about anything having to do with hemp or CBD oils or anything. So I'm glad to be having you in today so we can discuss this. So before we get into the heart of the matter, why don't you guys tell me a little bit about yourselves? Are you from this area originally?
Well, we both grew up in Wisconsin. I grew up in Lancaster, and she grew up in the Lone Rock area. We started dating in 2009, and we both ended up in Milton at that time, and bought a farm in 2012, got married in 2012. We have 2 adult children. Our daughter Ashley is a junior at UW-La Crosse, and Zachary is a recent high school graduate.
Wonderful, wonderful. So you've been in Milton, the Milton area since 2012. How do you like the area? Do you get to, I mean, I think we are kind of in the middle of the whole triangle, Milwaukee, Madison, and Chicago. Do you guys, was that a draw to you to come to Milton?
Honestly, what brought me to Milton was a divorce. My ex-wife and kids moved over here, so I relocated my life to be near my kids, of course. And then I was introduced to Tracy in 2009. She moved up to Milton to be with me in 2010, and then we bought the farm in 2012.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, so the whole crux of this interview is about CBD oil and hemp products. So what is CBD and how would you best describe that?
Well, quite simply, CBD is one of the 2 main compounds that you're going to find in the cannabis plant. The other one being THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, of course. But whereas CBD, I would best define it as with THC, it's known as a psychoactive drug. It's the one that gets you high. CBD is the therapeutic compound of the 2. So.
Okay, okay. What are the main benefits of CBD oil?
That's a good question, Tina. So when you want to talk about the benefits of CBD or any of the other phytocannabinoids that are in the cannabis plant, it's best that we first try to understand the endocannabinoid system in the human body. So the endocannabinoid system in the human body is a series of receptors that are primarily located in our brain, in our central nervous system, but also throughout our body sporadically and in peripheral organs. And so the phytocannabinoids attach naturally, like a lock and key system, to these receptors and neurotransmitters within the human body. And so together they work to create homeostasis or balance within the body and help to maintain our systems. So there are several different phytocannabinoids within the cannabis plant that work within our endocannabinoid system, and each of them have differential or differing benefits for our body and for our system. So.
Okay, okay. So I see by the picture up here, you've kind of got it laid out for us here. And so there's a lot going on in the head and then in the midsection of the body. And so that's, I'm guessing, where the main receptors are? Or
Absolutely. So that's where many of our central nervous system transmitters and receptors are located, and the main systems that control our immune system. So then the lock and key system of the phytocannabinoids from the plant match with our receptors in those systems and in those organisms and help to balance them out and create this homeostasis.
wonderful, okay. So when we are ingesting or applying CBD oils, what are is there any side effects to anything related to that?
There really are not many side effects to CBD. The World Health Organization actually states that it's not possible to overdose or to take too large of a quantity of CBD. So it plays in more with if individuals are taking other medications, they might have an adverse effect or not work well with those other medications. But at the end of the day, it's impossible to overdose from CBD or THC.
So no matter what I was taking different CBDs for, it wouldn't matter if I was taking 4 or 5 different or applying?
That's right. At some point, they're just not going to work at all.
Oh,
They're
I
not
see.
going to work adversely against you.
Okay, okay. So I'm sure being in this business and you've got you're wearing you had the mask on with the leaves, the hemp leaves. I'm sure that is confused a lot with the other product that does contain THC. So what are the common myths associated with hemp?
Well, I don't know that there are many myths associated with the hemp plant. Most of the myths are obviously associated with the marijuana plant. There's stigmatisms in regards to it makes people lazy, it does all these things, and there are obviously side effects to THC. It's called getting stoned. Some people enjoy that feeling. Marijuana is not for everybody to consume, just like alcohol is not for everybody to consume. But not even talking about those myths, if I had to say there's a myth around hemp, I would say that so many people think it's a new product or a new thing. And the fact of the matter is, like, some of the first laws in this country required farmers to grow hemp so that we didn't have to rely on stuff coming from across the big pond. So, I mean, this has been around longer than so this has been around, as long as time itself.
Sure, sure. And it's a natural product. It grows everywhere, right? Is there anywhere in the United States that it doesn't thrive in the ground?
Well, the cool thing about the cannabis plant in general is it's a weed, so you can just about grow it anywhere. Obviously, I've never been in the Southwest or anything, so I'm not going to speak about growing it in sand. I know a lot of the people out there that grow it usually have greenhouses and stuff, but I can tell you we're in the ideal climate and soil right here in Rock County too.
Well,
so.
that's great. That's good to know. So along with that then, so here in Wisconsin, and it was just 2 or 3 years ago that we did, how did that come about? Because now it's like you had to get a license. I was just wondering like what the regulations are for growing and harvesting and how that plays into everything. Was it not legal before a few years ago?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So in 2014, the U.S. Farm Bill, actually the 2014 and the 2018 Farm Bills from the USDA changed the control of hemp here in the United States. It's no longer a federally controlled substance. It's now, based on that Farm Bill, it's considered an agricultural commodity. So based on those, then it allowed the states to create their own programs in which they can regulate and enforce the growth and production of hemp. So we are actually participating in that program here in Wisconsin. It's a pilot program that's administered by DATCAP. And under that program, there's an application process where we get a license. The application process comes with fees, a criminal background check, as well as documenting the GPS coordinates of the fields that we plant in and their size. We're also required to plant using seeds that are a subspecies that have the 0.3% THC or less. And then when we harvest our crop, they're inspected and tested by the state to ensure that they are at 0.3% less of THC. And so any crop that might come in at a higher THC level, those crops fail and then have to be destroyed. And then crops that pass will receive a Fit for Commerce certificate. And that certificate travels with the product anywhere it travels throughout the state, going to processors and so forth.
Those rules mean that at 0.3% we run a business, at 0.4% we lose our entire crop, and then say at 20% we're put in handcuffs and hauled off to jail.
Oh, I see. So you
Right.
definitely don't want to go over the 0.3 for your livelihood, I'm sure. So, well, that brings me to this question. How do you, so you have the seeds that are 0.3 of the THC, and so how do you make sure you plant them, and can you plan on that ever going above that, or are there steps that you need to take to ensure that it never goes over the 0.3?
Well, you just buy seeds that have a certificate of authenticity.
Okay.
So you're trusting the seller wherever they come from locally, or there's plenty of sources on the internet that provide quality hemp seeds, and they have to provide a certificate of authenticity with that. So
Okay.
you're just trusting that person that it's the right seed, and then ultimately it comes down to the state's test at the end of the year to find out if it's 0.3 or lower. There's really no way to know in between there.
Okay. So when you started out then, I'm assuming that you bought seed from a reputable dealer. And so, and now that you have established your crop, now have you guys been doing this since 2018 then?
We got licensed actually in January of 2019.
Oh, okay.
And it's actually kind of funny because I've been a longtime advocate for the legalization of marijuana.
Oh, sure.
I consider myself an expert on the topic. But when we applied for the license, I truly thought that we were going to be growing industrial hemp, like what you saw in the old black and white pictures, what the farmers used to grow, you know, for fiber and stuff. So then I searched for seeds, and I found this whole new world of CBD hemp that I didn't even know existed. So I just found somebody, I was totally new to it, probably a little too eager. I did not find a Wisconsin source for those seeds. I just found some and I ordered them. But yeah, it was what I considered a trusting source, and we were growing hemp.
Okay. All right. So now that you have grown some, can you use your own, can you harvest your own seeds and do next year's crop from that? Or do you still have to get it from?
No, that's an excellent question, and we could, because in theory those seeds come from this plant that has less than 0.3% THC. But the problem with that is that, and this is one of the things that most people don't know about the cannabis plant, is it's one of the few plants that have a specific gender plants. So there's a male plant and a female plant.
Okay.
So if we collected 100 seeds out of our hemp that we grew this year, there's a good chance that 50 of them are going to be female and 50 of them are going to be male. And the males are absolutely worthless when it comes to growing any quality marijuana or hemp. So it's more justifiable to go online because they do produce feminized seeds that are guaranteed to be female bud producing plants. So it's just easier and safer to go online, less waste of time to make sure you get the feminized seeds versus popping 50 male seeds, feeding 50 male seeds, and then finding out in August, instead of getting buds, you're getting all the pollen and seeds that come with the male plant.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the male plants have their value if you want to generate seeds, or if you were really doing a lot of fibrous plant use for industrial hemp. But the majority of the market is in CBD, and so we want the females that produce the large flowers and buds and so forth, in which to get the higher quality CBD from.
I see. I see. I didn't realize any of that. So we have our rules here in Wisconsin. Are you familiar with rules or regulations in other states, surrounding states, or even states where it is legal
Well,
for THC? I mean?
Sure. Well, as far as the hemp, regulations go, since we're still under this interim rule of the USDA, and each state is kind of running under its own pilot program, every state that's participating in a hemp program essentially has their own level of regulation and restriction. But for example, say in Indiana next door to us, they have a hemp program, but hemp flower for smoking is illegal. Here it is not illegal. So there are states that have much stricter guidelines. But I think as this USDA final rule comes out in the next year or so, that'll become more even across the base for all the states. We'll all be kind of working under the same regulations and restrictions, and those kind of differences will go away. There will be an opportunity where those guidelines will be more strict than they are now. But at the same time, there'll be new benefits for us, such as opportunities for crop insurance and farm loans and that kind of thing. So with the good will come the bad when it comes to switching to that new program.
And as far as the THC aspect of that goes, it's obviously not federally legal, or it's still federally illegal. So it's regulated by the individual states. For the most part, I think they're all 21 and older. You got to be a resident, or you got to pay more taxes if you're non-resident. But yeah, that's still hit and miss by the individual states.
Okay, okay. And what about, and this might be out of your scope, what about other countries? I mean, so if I am purchasing CBD, if I go on the internet and I'm purchasing a CBD oil, and it originates from another country, what do you know about that? Are they regulated? Do they have strict rules?
Well, I think it's different from country to country as far as restrictions or even enforcement of those restrictions. So we would always just kind of advise not to purchase from overseas, and just utilize the hemp market that we have here in the United States. I mean, it's a very robust market, and at least we have the the regulations and the safety protocols in place to protect us.
Well, that's always a good idea to source locally.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I would agree with that too, and I wouldn't even want to mess with something that came from overseas. That brings me to another question as well. So, since the Farm Bill kind of got going here, so in Wisconsin, how many hemp growing farms are there, do you know, in Wisconsin? And I'm sure they're becoming more popular.
Yeah, I think in the first year there was something like 500 licenses applied for, and then by year two it was a little over 2,000.
Wow.
But yeah, part of the hitch and the giddy up too is that big internet companies like Google and Facebook don't let you advertise anything for CBD. They take down those ads, so it's really hard to get your name and brand in front of people. But there are definite Facebook groups out there that if you search hemp, you can find, and there's so many farmers in this state that there's no point in going to the video store to buy your CBD oil. There's just not. You can find it, and you can find it today.
Yeah, and that's funny you should mention that, because I know that there was a video store, they recently went out of business, but right away they were like having signs in the window and on their big marquee outside and stuff, CBD oil sold here. What do you think about that? I mean, because do we know? I mean, I never really questioned it. I never bought any, but I never really questioned, like, where is this coming from? Is this locally sourced, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we personally advise to never purchase items like that from those types of establishments, just for that very reason. You don't know what's in there. You can't verify where it was derived, whether it was here in the United States or elsewhere, or even if there's any other fillers or pesticides and that kind of thing. So it's important that if you're looking and shopping for CBD products, that it's best to always just shop locally. Utilize Wisconsin hemp farmers and hemp processors. There are plenty of high quality, reputable processors that work with farmers directly to process their fields and produce products to be sold, either directly on their own websites or through wholesalers and that kind of thing. So those are certainly the more, reputable places to find CBD than, the video store or the gas station or that kind of thing.
And the thing is too, those guys might have the best intent. I mean, they're there to make money, they're a business. They might have a good product, but you just don't know. And there's so many hemp stores and stuff, and people like ourselves that can answer questions versus somebody behind a counter that's also checking out videos or ringing up a gas slip. Nothing against those people, but they're not CBD. They don't know the CBD product, so any questions you have aren't going to be answered.
Right, right. I get that. So, and you guys are organic. I mean, everything that you don't use pesticides or.
Correct, right. Our base materials and our hemp in our products are organic. So we don't have any of those pesticides and contaminants. And that's another thing when you're shopping for these CBD products, read the label and see if the source can be verifiable. See if they've been third-party tested for their cannabinoid content, mold and contaminants and that kind of thing. And when you're shopping online, or even in the stores, there should be some link or resource to that producer's certificate of authenticity for that product, because any reputable producer will make that information readily available to their customers.
Sure, they wouldn't want to hide that. They'd want to get it right out there. Because,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I see that. So, well, that's great. That's good to know, because now I know if I'm in the market for that, what I need to look for, and locally sourced is
Look
always
for this.
always. I'll look for Thompson Hemp Company for sure, for sure. So, going back to the hemp plant, what are other products that are made or derived from hemp, and do you guys do any of that?
Right now we make our CBD coconut oil, and we offer smokable hemp buds, pre-rolled joints, and then different size quantities. But there are maybe a million different opportunities to use hemp. Builders can use, there's hemp concrete out there, there's hemp lumber. T-shirts, these T-shirts are made from hemp. The original Constitution and the original Declaration of Independence were both signed on hemp paper. It's just one of those things that can be used for, we don't even know how much stuff we can use it for, because it's been illegal for the last 70 years.
But prior to that 70 years, obviously it was grown widely and used for a variety of stuff. In my research for this program, I looked up to see what the different, there's all kinds of things like rope and like you said, building materials and papers and such.
Absolutely. Well, during the World War II effort, that's how folks here at home stayed involved. Gentlemen went to war, they needed seat belts and seat covers and rope and things of that nature, and the folks here at home processed hemp, and they created and built those products in order to get involved in the war effort. So it's been around for a long time.
So as you alluded to earlier, Tim, hemp has been around forever, and so now we're just getting back into, okay, let's legalize growing it type thing. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that, like I said, and as Tracy mentioned, we grew it for, they allowed farmers, they licensed farmers for World War II effort, and that timeline is after marijuana was prohibited in 1936.
okay.
They actually, for that window, they passed out licenses to farmers and let them grow hemp. Wisconsin in the early 1900s is one of the top hemp producing states in the country. Us and Kentucky, I think, were the top two. So this plant has been around for eons. We don't even know, because it's been federally prohibited for 70 years, we don't even know the potential benefits of this plant yet.
So in your crops, is there any concern about cross-pollination with marijuana plants?
No, none at all. Because first of all, you would have to legally be growing the marijuana in the same area as the hemp, which doesn't happen. But second of all, as I mentioned before, it's cannabis sativa is the species, and then marijuana and hemp are the subspecies. Okay. There's no worry about cross-pollination without the male plant, because the male plant's where the pollen comes from. So if you had a field of hemp and a field of marijuana, and there were males in those, yes, they would cross-pollinate, and the THC and CBD content would get all kittywampus on both of them, as well as all the buds would have seeds in them. If you have a hemp field and a marijuana field with what are 100% female plants, then there should be no pollen in the area, so there should be no cross-pollination.
I see, I see. So since you buy feminized seeds, then there's no issue with that at all. So you can be pretty confident.
Right,
that
there's no issue, because like I
yeah.
said, first of all, we'd have to have marijuana in the area, and if we did have marijuana in the area with no males, there's no cross-pollination.
Gotcha, I see that. So that brings me down to this last question, which you know, is kind of a hot topic, I think, across the country. Why is marijuana illegal?
I feel like I've been waiting the last 15 years to answer that question, Tina.
Well, good. I'm glad I asked it then.
I'll give you the short version.
Okay.
As I mentioned, some of the first laws in this country were laws requiring farmers to grow hemp to just be more dependent on more independent, I guess. I mentioned in the 1800s, cannabis was the #1 prescribed medicine in the country. In the early 1900s, as I already mentioned, Wisconsin was one of the top hemp growing states. The Volstead Act was passed in 1919, which obviously prohibited alcohol. A man by the name of Henry Anslinger was in charge of that, and he kind of saw the writing on the wall in the late 20s in 1930 that it was going to eventually be repealed. At about the same time, marijuana, spelled slightly different than we spell it now, was coming up and being smoked by a lot of Mexican people that were coming up to work in the fields and stuff. Heavy use in the black jazz circle. So white people created this law. Henry Anslinger was heavily involved, created this law to help control these people, have a reason to control these different colored people. And the Volstead Act was repealed in 1932, and Henry Anslinger got on board of anti-marijuana. This is about the exact same time that this new machine was created called the hemp corticator, because one of the problems with hemp was like cotton. It was very intensive, a lot of man hours to do that. And with the ending of slavery, they came up with the cotton gin, and it was the same problem in the hemp fields. They didn't have the labor to harvest the hemp. So the hemp corticator was invented, and it was actually on Popular Science in the early 30s, the next $1 billion crop, because they found a way to harvest hemp without all the manpower. Well, William Randolph Hearst, who owned most of the newspapers in this country, as well as large groves of trees that were sold to paper, realized what this plant was going to do to his industry. So he kind of teamed up with Henry Anslinger, and they created this misinformation campaign where they tried to scare people like, look, these Mexicans are smoking it, black people are smoking it, they're going to rape your white women. And all this is documented. There's papers of it. There's a movie called Reefer Madness, which talked about people going psychotic from smoking marijuana, which we know in 2020 does not happen. So in 1936 anyways, the Marijuana Tax Stamp Act passed, which essentially outlawed marijuana, which was also the hemp plant. And farmers didn't necessarily know that because they weren't aware, so all of a sudden hemp wasn't an option. But what happened was, the way it was worded was stated that you had to have a license. You could still get a license to grow or sell marijuana, but you had to first be legal to get that license. So it made it impossible, which essentially prohibited it, because they knew based on the Constitution they couldn't prohibit that. It's the federal government, they can't prohibit it. That's a states' rights issue. So they prohibited it anyways in the way that they could, and that carried on. In the 40s, the story was this stuff's going to make you crazy. In the 50s, it switched because we were worried about the communists. It switched to it's going to make your kids lazy. In the 60s, the hippies came along, and they discovered that it wasn't a bad drug, and it opened up the world to a lot of people. It opened up the world to what marijuana does for a lot of people. In 1969, the Supreme Court actually got the Marijuana Tax Stamp Act on its desk, and they ruled against it because they said it was unconstitutional because you had to break the law to make the law, which essentially prohibited it. So then in 1970, the Controlled Substances Act was passed, which classified marijuana as a Schedule I narcotic, which specifically means it has no medicinal benefit and a high risk of abuse. And then Jimmy Carter came along in 1976, gave everybody hope because he said he was going to decriminalize it, never got around to it. In 1980, Nancy and Ronald Reagan came along and they launched their Just Say No campaign, which is a campaign we grew up with. That kind of misinformation that I truly believe created a thought process, and to this day does to some degree, that if all drugs are bad, except alcohol, of course, they can isolate that over here, but if all other drugs are bad, kids believe that, okay, maybe my parents and teachers are telling me the truth, that marijuana is bad. But then they try it and they realize it's not bad. You know, they might not have the best experience, but they don't die from it. So then when the next person comes along and says, hey, what do you think about trying some heroin or something? It's natural that they think, well, they were lying about that one. Why should I 100% believe that this? Because I also know a lot of people who say they get their rocks off on this stuff. So it just created a misinformation thing, and to this day, we're still fighting the reefer madness from the 30s, the Just Say No campaign from the 80s. And state by state, they're finally proving that this is just a plan, that people like us who decide to consume this should not risk being put in handcuffs for this. They're realizing the revenue source from it. They're funding schools, anti-bullying programs, versus crowding their jails and wasting time, energy, resources, everything on a plan.
Very interesting. You've done your research and put a lot of thought and effort into the answer, which I very much appreciate. And it kind of leads back to, you know, the whole propaganda. You know, what they want you to believe is what they're going to throw at you. So it's interesting that you say from the 30s on, you know, and the different eras. Certainly, yep. I can see that. I'm sure that
that's how they did it, and that's why we like to say the war on drugs is almost over because of information. The internet has done for the marijuana movement in 20 years that hippies couldn't do in 60 years, and that God bless them.
Yeah,
you know, I appreciate everything they did, and everybody that fought or got put in handcuffs. They're martyrs in my eyes. But the internet is awakening people to what the reality of this planet is right now.
Yeah, yeah. So just to get back to the whole CBD thing, like I said, I didn't really know anything about it until you guys had contacted us and, you know, were like, hey, you know, can we get the word out? I'm so glad I did, because it forced me to kind of look into the different products and benefits and that type of thing. So back to the CBD oil that specifically you guys do. Your product is, you said, is infused with, is it coconut oil? And can you tell me what is the best use, and how are people using that, and what are their benefits from that specifically?
Sure, yeah, so we use an organic, unrefined, cold-pressed coconut oil as the base, and we extract the cannabinoids from the whole raw hemp plant into that oil. So ultimately, you're getting the full spectrum of all of the cannabinoids in the product when you're utilizing it. We utilize a certified kitchen to produce it. It's all food-grade ingredients, and our intended use of it is as a substitute for liquid cooking oils in your cooking, so that way it can be a part of your daily regimen. However, when we created our first sample batches and started handing it out to friends and family and people on Facebook, etc., they all used it topically. They keep it in the refrigerator so it stays firm, and then they would put it on for different aches and pains. But to our surprise, doing this, they're all telling us, within 15 or 20 minutes of applying it, that they're getting relief from their pain. Whether it's achy fingers or sore back or sore feet. It was amazing to get get the feedback from our customers and how they utilize it. And then we also have some customers that have been giving it to their aging pets. So melting it in the microwave for a little bit, giving them a milliliter or two along with their food each day, and starting to see them become more agile, eating better, just kind of having a little bit more spring in their step in their golden years. So, you know, we've read about the benefits of CBD and heard it from other folks, but when we, you know, decided to try it for ourselves, we kind of had to just let it speak for itself, and it certainly has.
So topically and systemically, you're seeing benefits from just the one that you guys are producing yourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things about our product is it's just coconut oil. So if you want to melt it at 76 degrees unless it's liquid, you can bake brownies with it, you can bake cookies with it, you can bake waffles with it. We have a customer who takes eye drops of it, and it says that doing eye drops daily has released the grip of arthritis on him.
Wow.
Yeah, so the topical aspect of it, and like my wife mentioned, the pet thing to me is one of the most amazing things, because I knew that there was potential to help humans, but the response we've gotten, and not just like, yeah, my dog liked it, like my dog is a different dog, you know, like I have one customer who got some and she came back for more, and she said her dog had to have surgery and was up whining all night in pain, and she gave him some, and she literally said he was snoring next to her but within a, you know, whatever, an hour or whatever. So it's pretty cool to come up with a product that we can retail, but then to see the benefits that people are getting out of it is better than any other feeling that we've had.
Well, and like you said, people are trying it on all kinds of different things and giving that feedback to you. So,
Yep.
you know, I mean, I can only imagine how you guys are feeling. Like, wow, this is really
Yeah.
doing a good thing for all kinds of
Yep.
people
Well,
and animals and areas.
And that's why I want to thank you for having your ears open to inviting us in here and listening to what this, you know, learning about this plant, and even doing some research beforehand. Because one of the biggest hurdles, if you want to go back to the why is marijuana illegal, it's because people don't care. It doesn't affect them. They don't consume it. They don't know anybody that's been arrested by it. So it's just a nothing to them. But when people do the research, the data is there. There's no other conclusion to come to if you do proper research than why are we criminalizing this plant?
Mm-hmm. What do you see as the next step in the process of legalization for marijuana?
That's a great question, Tina. So we're coming upon an election, and the individuals that we elect to our local state legislature, Congress, and the executive office actually have the power to change those laws and either decriminalize or make it legal for medical or recreational purposes. So either through creating bills or even signing executive orders in order to make those things happen, it starts with our election process. So if you're interested to find out if candidates on your ballot or in your area are pro or against marijuana legalization at any level, you can research that through doing a Google search or go to normal.org. They've got lists by state of all of the existing candidates and the incumbents on their position on marijuana legalization. So if we want to make change in this area, it starts with voters getting involved in the election process and voting in individuals that are for the legalization of it.
Wonderful, wonderful. And another plug to vote. So thank
Absolutely.
you very much. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Tracy and Tim, for coming in today and educating us on CBD oil and hemp and all of the products that can come from that. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to be with us to educate us.
Our pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you, viewers, for tuning in. And if you have any other questions about the CBD oil, hemp, or legalization of marijuana or anything along those lines, contact Tracy and Tim. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you and inform you. Thanks again. We'll see you the next time. Bye.